Hello, good evening to all the educators. Welcome back to another session of Foundations. How is everybody? Are some people here? Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
How is everybody? How are things?
Yes, we are good,
Hope
ma'am.
everybody is safe in the extreme weather conditions.
Yes, ma'am.
How many of you are in a very difficult situation at this time, but fine? Who all have a difficult weather conditions at in or around hometown, but are still fine. I'm praying for everybody, each one of my members at foundations and other communities, that I wish all my educators are absolutely fine. They're struggling, but they're fine, and we all come victorious out of this calamity. Just a happy monsoon. Monsoon is very happy with all of us. So it's showering its blessings, but let us still take care, look after ourselves, look after our health. It's very important that we keep healthy. A lot of illnesses in this time of the year, they tend to crop up. So look after, eat healthy, maintain hygiene, explain this to the children also, especially the foundational years. They're very young and they must learn all these things, part of life. All right. So with this, I'm glad to know that everybody's fine, everybody's doing good. We've come back with yet another session of Foundations with Dr. Nina Gulabini. And the topic for today's session will be Spiral Approach for Foundational Years. You can already see this on your screen. So yes. A lot of people have already joined us. We'll wait, we'll let everybody else join in. We're already at 4 o'clock. And as always, we start by 4 or 5 maximum. So we'll let people keep joining in. So with this, over to you, Nina ma'am.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And
good afternoon
to each one of you. Sorry if my phone bothers you. I'm trying to keep it on mute, but I think some of the WhatsApp calls still pop up.
Your volume is a little low. If we can.
So,
yes.
On a full volume. Anyway. So
I'll just mute everybody. Maybe that will help. I'll just, so teachers, if you have any questions, just let me know. We can put it up on the chat box. Myself and my friend Avantika is here. So both of us will take up your queries. Ma'am, you'll unmute. You can unmute and begin. Yes.
Good afternoon. Good to go?
Yes.
So thank you very much to all those who have joined. Numbers are increasing, and I'm sure in another 5-10 minutes, we're going to have many more. And as I go along with my topic today, I will continue to admit you in. So thank you, Himani. And as you've already just stated that it's a monsoon time. So a lot for us to learn, for everybody to learn and unlearn and relearn. These are my 3 key pet words. So I keep stating these again and again. Of course, very difficult times. Last 2 days, I was in Panchkula and traveling by train, going and coming. It was indeed a sight through the train window to see how village after village was submerged in water. So it's very, very important that we keep our spirits high and up, even in these challenging times, as Himani just stated, because how we feel and what we feel is what we transfer it on to our children, right? So it is very important for we as parents and as educators to be in high spirits. Let our children see that there is nothing that can defeat us. So we remain forever going. So on this note, let's move ahead. It's a very short topic. I've tried to make it as simple as possible and also try to relate it with your day-to-day learning. So let's start with the spiral. So there are a couple of things that I'm going to cover today. What is the spiral? Why do we need the spiral learning approach? And many of you may already be actually doing it, but not aware of the fact that you're already following spiral approach. And then I would pick up a few benefits of the spiral approach. What are the key elements of the spiral approach, and then we will go on to in the foundational years, we have numeracy, literacy, reading, writing, and some general awareness and science concepts, how and what are the things that can, and we introduce that as a part of our spiral approach, and how we can embed it in whatever way we are doing our lesson plan. Now, I'm going to ask one question to each one of you today who's joined in. When we read the word spiral or hear the word spiral, what goes into your mind? What comes to your mind? What is it that it resonates with you? क्या आता है सबसे पहले दिमाग में? The moment you hear the word spiral, what image gets created in your mind? Anything, you can put it on the chat box.
What comes into your mind when you think of, when you hear means molded? Nazima mom says means molded, goes up and down, all-rounder approach.
Okay, so that's an all
Something that is continuous.
Okay, fine. हम ना बहुत बड़ी बड़ी बातें पहले सोचने लगते हैं और बेसिक्स भूल जाते हैं. This is what I wanted to. So when it comes to spiral, I would like you to go back to your childhood memories and see सबसे पहले आपने क्या spiral touch किया, क्या देखा, क्या feel किया. What's your first memory of spiral? What's the first memory? सबने spiral notebook कभी ना कभी तो use करी है. Spiral.
There's an interesting answer saying jalebi.
Very good. I had jalebi yesterday and today. I was just coming to that. Thank you very, very, very much. I'm so glad to whosoever has answered this. I'm sure from North India. And this weather, jalebis.
I know.
I've been eating it since last 2 days. So thank you very much for reminding me and that everybody that, that's what, and that is how we have to help children learn. Whosoever has responded, I'm just so glad that you are actually able to think how we can teach children using things from our environment. Something that I touched upon in the last session. So let's look at spiral. So one, you said jalebi. If you haven't seen a jalebi or anything similar to that, we've all worked in some notebooks, spiral notebooks. And I remember as children, it was very fascinating to go on feeling the spiral, how it moves, kabhi nikal jata hai corner se, and then we again refix it, and then how it moves into the holes of the different sheets. So what is the other thing that brings to your mind when it comes to spiral? Okay, let me just move in. So, the spiral steps, I have one at home also. So, how many of you, बहुत सारे movies में भी हमने देखा होगा, बहुत सारे बड़े-बड़े halls में, old buildings, you would see spiral steps, So, spirals are always very mesmerizing. They are simple, but they are always very carefully designed. Right? So if you look at the spiral book, the spiral steps, the jalebi, many of us who've tried our hands on jalebi will mess it up. It's going to be one big lump because we can't. It's simple, but it's mesmerizing and it is interestingly and very carefully designed. So that is what the spiral is. So if we all have now understood what the spiral is, let's move on. Why do we need this spiral learning approach? Research has stated that, there's something called a forgetting curve, that whatever children learn or whatever we teach as educators to children or as parents to children, they only remember very little element of that, so more than 50% of is forgotten. It's lost within very few days. Okay. So if this is what the research has to tell us, then what is the solution? So because of this forgetting curve, we need the spiral. So the solution to ensure that our children do not continue to forget what they are learning, we need to have a spiral approach to learning. So whatever the lessons that are learned in the early years, they don't last only a few days, but they are a lifetime lesson, right? So if they have to be a lifetime lesson, then we have to create our learning style in a way that it just builds on to, we've have you seen buildings getting constructed? तो वो क्या लगाते हैं नीचे से बनाने ऊपर 8 मंजिल 3 मंजिल 10 मंजिल. So there's something called a scaffolding. There's a whole structure that's laid, and we start from the bottom, but the bottom is very important. The base is very important. So the work that we put in right now is very valuable, not just today, but it is going to have payoffs tomorrow. So we are building forward. So now that is the very important aspect of the spiral learning. To reduce this forgetfulness, and second, that we create a lifetime of learning. So these are the two reasons why we need a spiral learning approach. Now, as I had started in the beginning and said that many of us are actually using the spiral approach to learning, but we may not realize that we are already doing. So if any of you or most of you have stated this to your students, that pay attention, there's something important, and it will come up again later in the year. Chances are that you already taught through a spiral curriculum. Right? So which means that we go back to what we had done. So just a second, I just keep admitting so that I don't miss out anybody. So now what is spiraling? And when we say spiraling, we've all seen the image of brain. This is like the spirals in the brain. So spiraling that's why is rooted in the brain-based and cognitive science. So it's not something that just come out of the blue, but it has a strong foundation and it has a strong reasoning. So before we move on to it, I thought it's important that we should pay gratitude, and we should also be aware as to who gave us the spiral approach to teaching or learning. So this gentleman was Jerome Bruner, who was a cognitive theorist, or also he's a psychologist. He gave this approach to learning he actually didn't invent it. He saw that teachers were already using it, and he realized that this needs to be documented, and this can be a great foundation for as an approach to designing curriculums and for a better student learning, and for educators to create a better learning approach for their learners. Now, what did he state? So first in 1960, when he had come up with this spiral learning approach, he first stated that as educators, we need to respect the ways of thoughts. That is the way children are thinking, the way they are constructing their knowledge. So as during the growing years. So our focus is primarily foundational years. So he said, so initially he was focusing more on the way children think. But eventually in 1977, he came up and he developed on this idea further, and he said that I think it is very, very significant what he stated, that you can teach your child, or a child can learn anything, even in the initial years, provided this information is presented in a form which would engage children in that, right? So now there are 2-3 elements. One, that there is nothing difficult to teach children, or there's nothing difficult that children can not learn. What is it and how that learning has to is only based on, as an educator, how is it that we present it, and how do we engage children and make that learning process so simple, so repetitive, that they gain mastery of it, right? So it is nothing to do with that this is simple, children will learn, this is complex, but how do we take it up? So any topic, any subject can be introduced even in the foundational years. Now, what are the 3 key principles of spiral curriculum? Now, very simple. Let's go to bicycle. So if we look at a cycle, what happens? The cycle wheel keeps returning from where it has started. This is how it's cyclic. The first thing about spiral approach to learning is that it is cyclical. It is cyclic. So it just goes in a rotation, So it is like that you pick up a topic. Let's say we introduce the topic of anything about fruits or letters or numbers, anything. Think of any topic. Now, when you introduce that topic, in spiral approach to learning, we keep coming back to that topic again and again, again and again. So that makes it cyclic. Now, when we return to that topic, when we return and take the topic to a greater depth. So it increases the depth, the complexity, right? So the topic remains the same, but if we return to the same topic, let's say of the fruits, of apple, of colors, but what we are doing is we are going little deeper each time we retouch that topic. I'm going to share a couple of examples with you. And the third element is prior knowledge. So when we are taking that topic and we are returning to that topic again and again and taking it to a deeper level, we are basing it on the prior knowledge. So whatever children have learned, let's say in nursery, and they've mastered that skill, we take the same topic, bring them to KG, bring them to class 1, class 2, and we increase the depth of it, we make it more complex, and we also base it on the prior knowledge. So it's very important. So we don't jump. We don't assume that, oh, yes, children would have known, so let's start this. We must, as educators, ensure that our students have mastered the basic skills. So foundational years, I feel spiral learning approach is so very important, because if our students have mastered these foundational years, the early years of learning, the concepts, the skill, then they only have to build on it as a scaffolding, right? So the foundation years are very important. So let's really enable them and facilitate them to master whatever they are learning. So through a diagram, it's very interesting, how the spiral curriculum happens. So you introduce a new content. Now, when we introduce a new content, the very important element of repetition and revision. Now, why repetition and revision? Because repetition and revision will enable the child to master that new content. And as the child masters the new content, we go upwards towards from simple to complex, from simple to more difficult elements of the same content. So mastery is the key thing in spiral approach to learning, and repetitive and revision is another key thing. So that is how we are able to move from the simpler to the more difficult content within the same topic. Now, what are the benefits of spiral learning? So first, that it is the topics are revisited, right? So we don't disconnect from that topic. So if we are talking of, let's say, transport, or we're talking of sky, we would bring back that, yes, there is the aeroplane that goes in the sky, there's a helicopter that goes in the sky, there's a jet that goes into the sky, right? So the topics have been introduced. Now we are only revisiting the topics, consolidating our understanding, and increasing the complexity each time we touch the topic. And new learning, as I said in the last slide, prior knowledge, right? Cyclic, increasing in depth, and it's based on prior knowledge. So the new learning is always related to previous learning, right? We don't bring in something totally new. And I'll show you by a few examples that how we can build onto it, even if we don't introduce addition, subtraction in the initial years, in the first 2-3 years, but we can introduce that through play, and how then we actually, when we do it with children on blackboard or in the worksheets, the workbooks, it becomes so interesting, and it becomes so relevant, because children have actually already experienced that concept and that content in their earlier year. And learners' understanding increases. Now, because they're continuously revisiting the topic, they're continuously going from basics to the depth, from simple to the complex, the more difficult, and it is building base by base, brick by brick. It makes learning, it increases the child's learning, but they don't forget what they had learned. That's the key aspect of the spiral approach to learning. Now, what is usually our approach, especially in the Indian context? We make children memorize a lot. There's a lot of focus on rote learning. But if we today look at the progressive schools, which also our national curriculum framework and the national education policy highlights, is that we should move from rote learning to memorizing to developing mastery. And mastery can be developed not just on paper. Mastery can be developed through a lot of games and through play, and which is the key focus of the national curriculum framework, that any topic, any content can be very interestingly taught to children by engaging them in play. And I'm going to give you a couple of interesting examples. So now children, even if they haven't mastered, see, every child, let's say if we have 30 children, 40 children in a class, they'll all master a particular concept and a skill at their own pace. So no two children are going to be the same. So if we suddenly keep jumping and at the pace of some of the children who are moving fast, then we are going to miss out on these children. But if we allow these children we keep revisiting the earlier concept and skills and topics, these children will also be able to master. It's like first children learn to crawl, then they stand, then they walk, and then they run. So same way, if we have not allowed them to crawl and stand and mastered that skill, we cannot expect them to walk and run. So we're going to let's take some examples of spiral curriculum in whatever we are taking up in the foundational years. We do the mathematical concept, the number work, the numeracy, literacy, the language, and some science, or what we call as the general awareness topics, right? So I'm going to take a few examples, and it is not going to be exhaustive, but it is only illustrative. Right. So I have picked up a few, but the idea is to just give you some examples, some illustrations for you to start thinking on those lines and build onto it. And when you revisit your curriculum, you may have whatever curriculum, but you can do it in a format which ensures that each child masters the concept, masters the skill, and you are building in whatever they have learned. So we can introduce a lot in their foundational years. So let's say we shapes and numbers, right? So we usually introduce these concepts in the foundational years. Let's say starting from nursery. Now we introduce to them the shapes, and we continue to do the shapes for the next 2-3 years, and then we continue to do it. It's the foundation, it's the basis for geometry, right? All the angles, pentagon, the hexagons, the right angle, the triangles, the pentagon. So all that we do has its foundation in the early years when we are teaching children shapes. Now, one way is that we have a shape chart. We have some shapes pasted here and there. We give them the shapes to paste them on their books, or we just send them to color. And we finish. We throw the sabko concept of shapes aa gaya, let's move forward. How we used to do is 3 years, we would continue to revise shapes, but we would take it up in a progressive order. So let me give you an example. What are the simplest shapes? We always start with a circle, because children, all of them play with the ball. So it's the easiest for them to relate with. So they start with a circle. So we show them this is a circle, ball is a circle, apple is a circle, etc., etc. Some balloons are also a circle, or whatever is a circle in their environment. Then we move to the basic shapes of square, a rectangle, and a triangle. These are the 4 basic shapes that we start with. We may start with one shape, then we move on to the next and to the next, but we don't miss out on the first one. We continue with that. So we can give them the coloring sheets. We can ask them to do dot, dot, dot when we do the pattern writing. I'll come to that. So we keep repeating these shapes. Now, what is the next level? We introduce more shapes. So let's say if they've done circle, we do half circle. We do crescent because they're all coming out of the circle, the shape circle. Now let's look at the square. So the next level when we fold a square, it becomes a rectangle. Okay, we are also introducing to them the concept of fractions, the concept of half, full. Now, when we have started with the numbers and the number values and the counting, we also, with the same shapes, we also children and help them to learn. Rectangle has how many sides? They have how many sides? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So they run their finger on the sides of it. We do it onto anything that's square in our environment. Maybe the top of the chair, it could be the table, whichever shape there. So let's let them run their finger onto that. So what are they doing? They're counting the sides. So a rectangle has 4 sides. We don't start it with that. We just started with the shape. They get to familiarize with it mostly by coloring, pasting, associating it with objects in their environment. Then we move on as they start understanding the numbers, they start counting, we help them to count the sides of. So the triangle would have 3, square would have 4, rectangle would have 4. Then we go to the next level. A square has same size, right? So they have to, so as we tell them the same size. And with rectangle, 2 sides are small and 2 sides are long. They are too short and too long. So we are also bringing in the concept, but it's the same shape, rectangle, square, circle, triangle. Then we introduce a few more shapes. We come to the diamond, we come to kite, we come to pentagon, we come to oval. So these are the other shapes that we keep introducing while continuing to revise the previous shape and adding new elements to the same shapes. So they may even start to draw the shapes. Okay. So point is that we mustn't think that nursery we've introduced the shapes, KG we've introduced, no, without revisiting the earlier ones and without consolidating and adding new elements to the same topic. So that's something we have to keep in mind as and when we are doing, if we are using the spiral learning approach, which has been proven to be the most effective learning approach. So let's look at then how the spiral happens in the numbers. So we start with, we all teach the first concept in general awareness is myself, my body. Okay. So where do children learn? Even if they have not come to a preschool, they'll all know I have 2 eyes, 1, 2, I have 2 ears, touch your ears, I have 1 nose, then you count the fingers. They don't need anything else, just their body. So where do the first number skill spiral start is from counting their body parts. Then we move on to the number image, that is 1, 2, 3. Then we do the rote one that, you know, like a rhyming one. We all know this poem, 1, 2, buckle my shoe. 3, 4, 5, 6. We all know it. I don't need to repeat it, right? So when we do these rhymes, so everything is very integrated. What happens? They begin to learn the counting 1, 2, 3, 4. Though they may not still be able to recognize what is 1, what is 2, what is it. They may not be able to associate with the number image. So the second level they will go to is the number image. They've already started to count, okay, but they will not have seen the number. So then we start associating the number to their number image. Then we come to the number values, right? So what we do, We do it in the workbooks, but we can even start it with, you can give them the number 2, the number 3 on a piece of paper. Very easy. You don't have to spend too much of time cutting, pasting. Give them 5 leaves. Tell them, okay, now pull out, match, this number with the value with the objects in your environment. We are always focusing on doing things in the notebooks and the books. And that is where children begin to get little irritated and frustrated with their learning. But if the same learning we start doing in a playway method, children begin to learn. So once they have mastered this, now when you make them do it on a workbook or in a notebook, children will enjoy doing it because they have already mastered. They don't have to struggle to do on the paper or in the book. And then we move on to the basic math concepts of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Now I'm going to tell you how even in your KG, usually we start these concepts maybe from class 1 onward, that these can be introduced through play even in your nursery and KG also. So we'll come to that. So this is just something like the numbers and the number values. Now, how do we give children hands-on experiences of basic maths? By engaging them before even we introduce the worksheets and notebooks. Now, first, as I said, that let's help them to count objects in their environment. Start with the familiar, okay? Not only opening notebooks and books. So start with the familiar. Now, what is there, the familiar thing in their environment? I had done that last time also, learning from our environment. Let them count objects in their environment. Let them go around the room, touch the wall, feel the wall, how many sides of the wall, chairs, tables. You can count the chairs, you can count the tables, you can count the legs of the table, the legs of the chair, the bags in the classroom, the bottles in the classroom, windows, doors, fans, trees, and the list is endless. Whatever is there, help them to associate. Okay, if you're looking at shapes, help them to associate. Okay, this door looks like a square, or is it a circle? Let them relate it, right? Now, application only comes when we help them to relate things with their environment. Otherwise, it becomes purely academic only in the books. They're not able to relate it with their real life and the real life experiences and the real environment. We can have, like, I remember as children, we all used to play hopscotch. हम लोग in the up north India में तो उसको stapu बोलते थे. I don't know in other parts of India what we call this game, where we would make these. Remember, Imani?
Yeah,
I don't know. आप लोगों ने खेला है, हमने तो बहुत खेला है.
हमने भी खेला है.
और उसके
pieces of गमले and all.
Correct. तो हमने गमले के टुकड़े ले लिए, कोई flat पत्थर ले लिए. And it's a great thing where we are doing number skills. It's a gross motor skill. It's balancing your body, and it's a game, right? आपने किसी line को touch नहीं करना. How you move from 1 going up to number 10. It's a beautiful game. Please introduce it, or I would say reintroduce it in your classrooms. You can even draw with the chalk on the floor. You don't need to go out also. Right? Class में table को पीछे करो, अपना draw करो and play with them. Children will love it. And number skills will be learned like this. So let's introduce games to introduce addition, subtraction, multiplication. You will say nursery KG में कैसे हो सकता है ना? ये concept अभी नहीं आया, वो बाद में introduce होगा. लेकिन हम games तो खेल सकते हैं. अब आपके पास क्लास में क्या है? कुछ नहीं, आपको pre preparation करना. If we have some glasses, maybe crayons, maybe candies, maybe leaves, maybe twigs, anything that is easily accessible, easily available. So I have now, let's say I'm doing addition. So what do? I make a group of 5 twigs. Then I say, okay, now X child has 5 twigs. The Y child has another 1 twig, and another child has 2 twigs. So we're going to put all these together and give it to another fourth kid, right? So this kid has 5, the other one has 2, so 5, 6, 7, and Raj has another 3. So let's move on, 8, 9, 10, and we give these 10 twigs to Jayashri. Okay, so what is the child learn? हमने उसको कोई एडिशन तो नहीं कराया पेपर में. हम कहाँ एडिशन शुरू करते हैं? नोटबुक्स, ब्लैक बोर्ड में कराते हैं उसको एब्स्ट्रैक्ट. हमने भी ऐसे ही पढ़ा था, इसलिए हमको वो बोरिंग लगा. So I felt that why should we make things boring? Let's make children things interesting, and it's real life. So when we are saying add means to get more, to get a bigger number. So 1 is a smaller number, 3 is a bigger number. It is increasing. So can we should do these concepts so beautifully through this game? So Jayashri, A child had 2 twigs, B child had 3 twigs, D child had 5 twigs, and now the E child has 10 twigs. So who have now more twigs? So through this game, we can actually introduce without using the word addition. We've already introduced the concept of addition. Now let's do subtraction. I have placed 30 leaves on my table, on one table, not my table, on one table in the classroom. Okay. So I said, okay, now I'm going to share my leaves with some children. Who wants 1, who wants 2, who wants 3? I'm left with only 3. I've shared, I've distributed all. So my number is decreased. I've now got a smaller number. I started with 10 leaves, 20 leaves, whatever the counting you are doing. So if you can create, now does it require too much of preparation? No. Do you require massive resources? No. It requires a lot of effort? No. But it engages children. It involves children. It allows them to think. They are seeing it, right? So what is happening? They are working on it. They're using their hand. They are seeing it. They're listening to it. They're engaging in action. Learning is faster. And they're going to master that concept very, very fast. Okay. So let's move on to, we all do fractions later. But हम क्या करते हैं? Topic of fractions. जैसे ही बच्चा दिखता है 1 oblique 4, what is this? It scares me, mommy. I don't know this. What ma'am is starting. But if we introduce that in the initial years, let's see how we do. Now we've got a paper. I showed you. So we have this one paper. We give it to all the children, and 2 children are sitting and sharing the table. So we say, okay, now we're going to have this one paper, but 2 children are going to share it. So how do we do that? Problem solving. And they do this. So they will fold it, they will figure it out, how they have to do it. And they have learned the concept of some fractions. They've learned the concept of division, and they've learned the concept of sharing. So from one paper, we can have 2 parts. So one part, and it's a smaller part now, and 2 children can share that. When we go to kindergarten, using the various shapes, again, we can do half of each shape. 1 by 2, which we will do it later. Right, and say 1 part is now become into 2 parts. So half of any shape. Again, we are revisiting the shapes. Okay. So the children love chocolates and they don't like to share chocolates. So we can have, and chocolates are very beautiful. You know, most of them have equal size cubes. So squares bane hote na, chote chote. So let's say, so use of rectangles and square concept. So how much, we have 5 children. I have a bar which has 10. So I'm going to distribute it to 5 children. How many parts each child will get? Simple calculation. Through play, through a game, through a celebration, we are teaching them the concept of sharing. We are teaching them the concept of division, and how 5 children will share 1 chocolate. How many parts each child will get. Are the same size? Are they different size? It was someone got only a square, another one got a rectangle because there are two parts to it. Then this is a cake, but we can have anything which is a square, and we cut it into 4 parts, 5 parts, 6 parts. We can even do an apple. Okay, so it was one apple, and when we cut it into slices, we can have 2 parts, we can have 4 parts, we can have 10 parts, we can have 6 parts. So what is the image that's settling into their head is introducing them to fractions, introducing them to dividing one into many. Now, another important concept that usually wait maybe for class 1, class 2, and then we'll tell them, बच्चों आपकी बैग में स्केल है, चलो अब मेजर करो. और फिर उनको बोरिंग लगता है, उनको दिखता भी नहीं है स्केल में because it's so small, right? Or some children will get even the smaller scale. I'm still showing you a big. So I saw a lot of schools have these measuring tapes, they have these kitchen instruments, the measuring cups, the measuring spoons. So we give it to children to transfer something from one to another. Even if this part of sand play, or when they are going out to sift, or you have a bowl of rice or a bowl of atta, and they are doing it. So they understand the concept of measurements. How many spoons do I need to fill the glass? You can give them small bowls and give them atta to share, and then they have spoons. So one child has a small spoon, one child has big spoons. So then I've already filled it. I needed only 4 spoons full to fill my bowl. Another one said, but mine is not filled. I've already done 10 spoons. So what are we giving? We're telling them how many, the multiplication, how many times did I have to put it to fill my glass? 5 times, 6 times, 3 times, 4 times. So that's how we introduce the concept of multiplication. Now, what's the best way to measure? Children start to measure their desk. They start to measure this. If they've done counting till 10, give them their workbooks, their notebooks, their bags to measure. It's a fun activity for children, but the learning is phenomenal. And I'm just giving you a few examples. I'm sure you all are so super creative. You can create so many more activities around it alongside your workbooks and notebooks. Okay, now this is again moving on to fractions when we move to class 1. Now, if you've done all this in nursery, KG, when you do it in class 1, class 2, it will be way easier because children have in their head already got this concept of 4 pieces of 1, 2 pieces of 1, 3 pieces of 1, right? So that's already there. You can do it on paper, you can do it on anything that you have. Similarly, when we have, maybe you have a big box and we cut it into smaller portions. So 1 part goes to another, 3 goes to another. You can do addition. You can see how many put together make this whole one big piece. Again, using of rectangles and square concept, ribbons, very easy to get. So each child gets the same size of a ribbon. Now, this can be done with children when they begin to use, their fine motor skills are a little developed and they can use scissors, now the safe scissors. So each child gets an equal part, but now each child is making further parts to it. Someone has made it into only 2 parts, someone does it 3 parts, someone has kept it same, so it remains with 1 part, someone has done maybe smaller pieces. So they all see that they all got the same length of the ribbon, but they all can get as many parts as they want to, some equal, some unequal. So these are great ways to engage them in the mathematical concepts. Okay, so these are some few because I can go on and on, but we have to close somewhere. Himani would start looking at the watch. And I know my sessions always I go overboard. Now let's look at the language spiral. So where do we start our language? We start with the sounds. Okay, a child doesn't know what is A, B, C, but they develop the language skills because they're listening to the words. As they are listening to the words, they're building a vocabulary. And then we bring the same sounds to them, the phonics we all do, to ABC, right? We all do that. We also do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. All children love this. No? They start from A and they go to Z. But that's not just enough, because that sequence is not important in reading. Do we need the sequence in reading? No. Do we need that sequence in writing? No. We could have A and T coming together. We could have B and O coming together, etc. Right? So sequence is only as some kind of a rhyming thing that we teach them, but focus should not be only on that. That's just fun play. Now, from the sounds and alphabet recognition, we go to the, we start with the picture books. Sorry. We start with the picture books. So how do children learn? Even when they are infants, toddlers, we give them books, so they recognize, they start identifying from the picture. So they start doing picture reading. They're building their vocabulary. And then we move to the letters and the sound. Then we move to the storybooks, right? So they may not be able to read, but they would really, if you have seen some of these children, they precisely know where this page ends without being able to read. Because when you are reading it out to the child, they know how things are, because they are they're seeing the words, they're doing the picture reading simultaneously, and they know where the teacher now is going to go move to the next page. Right? It's very interesting. Then finally, children begin to read themselves from 2-letter word to 3-letter, 4-letter, and on. But they always join the letters using the sounds. So that is the spiral which we all are already following. Now, what is the writing spiral? So where do we start? Children always start with scribbling. So when you give them, they may not even know how to hold the crayon. We never start with a pencil. We always, even in the crayon, we start with a very fat crayon. You know, in the market, you get this thick crayon. And we always start with that. The fine motor skills are still developing. So start with the fatter crayons, allow them to scribble. They need large space because the hand moves like this. They cannot move like this. Give them bigger spaces. What we used to do was the old banners used to place it at their height all along the walls. Then they would go about scribbling. Some children just enjoy it. They would scribble all kinds of colors onto it, and they would come and tell you, oh, I have done a ball, I've made clouds, or I have made mountains, whatever comes to them. I've made flowers. It's in their imagination. Then we move on to maybe an object, a bigger object, just one object on a page. So when children are 3, after scribbling, the next level, we cannot start writing. If we are doing that, it's going to be a struggle with children. They haven't mastered the thing of moving the hand in a smaller space. Writing means very small space. So from a larger area to then a confined area, and then from this we move on to one sheet with 2 objects or 3 objects. When they are able to, they've mastered the skill, we move on to the pattern writing. If you straight jump from scribbling to pattern writing and to letters, children are not going to enjoy it. You will be continuously holding their hand and forcing them to write. And they've not mastered it, they will hate writing. Today, if most of the children don't enjoy writing, is because they've not gone through this process, gradual process and progression from scribbling to coloring in a larger space, coloring in a smaller space, and then the pattern writing, bigger pattern writing, to smaller space pattern writing, to then tracing the letters. And then we move on to independent writing without tracing. So that has to be the spiral when we go in for writing. And if you're not following that, I really request you to please do that and allow every child to master each level before they move on to the next level. And I guarantee you that once you have allowed children from space, every child will. But if you force learning, they will not enjoy it. And if children do not enjoy and there is no joy in learning, it will become a struggle and they will never be academically happy, and they will never be academically doing well because there is no joy. Do as adults we like to do if we don't enjoy that? If you don't like cooking, you hire a help to cook. Oh, I don't like cooking. But poor children, they don't like to move on to the next step. We force them to move on to the next step just because we are adults. So please pay attention to every child. Foundational years means no rushing, no rushing. Some child will take 3 pages of coloring, some child will take 6 pages of coloring, and that is what you have to help your parents to do a lot of repeated and revision to reinforce the learning at home. Not really homework. Now, another important aspect is moving from familiar to unfamiliar. Why I give so much of focus and importance to learning from your environment, that's familiar environment. We start giving them images of crab and the alligator and XYZ. Why don't we pick up things from first their environment and then move to those? Our child has not. I'm not against it that we cannot give them more elements into their environment, but let's start from familiar to unfamiliar, because then they feel secure. They have that confidence. Yeah, I know it all, right? I can do it. So, there's this floor play. I just gave you about hopscotch, but there are also individual and group activities that we can do. Now, there are some examples I have shown you, stomp and spell. So what we used to do was, we would create a grid on the floor. So letter grid. हम पेपर में बनाते हैं ना, वो लेटर पूरा लेटर्स लिखना है, बॉक्सेस बना आपने बना दिया, colored chalk से बना दिया, paint से बना दिया. How much time would it take? Maybe 10 minutes max. And children love watching as you do it, right? Now, let's start with, when we are doing general awareness about their name and they've already learned A to Z. So with that as an assumption, they've mastered A to Z. So let's start with their name. Even though they're writing 2 letters and 3 letters and they're beginning to read. So every child is familiar with their name. So let's say my name is Anuva. So what we do, in that grid, the child moves from A to N to U to B to H to A to B. So what's the child done? Kinesthetically, the child has learned. The child has learned through action, not just on the paper. For child wrote, the teacher wrote big, Anubhav. So it's writing A, he's looking at A, he's jumping on A, then he's moving to N. So he's learning the sequence of the letter in his name. He moves on to more familiar words like mama, dad, dog. Now, before we only put them on, you put them on paper. I'm not saying don't have workbooks. It's much faster with the teacher. But alongside, can we do, and always there will be children who will learn, take more time to learn, and there will be children who will be faster at it. So what happens when children have finished their work? They need something, otherwise they'll go destructive in the class, right? So, okay, let them then play. And children who are still struggling to do it on paper, let them play first and then go on to paper. Then we move on to the unfamiliar words, whichever is your sequence of words. You can use pebbles, you can use wood chips, you can use even the caps of the bottles, a lot of these plastic bottles, although I'm against it, but anyway, आप use तो कर रहे हो, उसका जो cap है, उस cap को आप paint कर सकते हो और उसके ऊपर number लिख सकते हो, letters लिख सकते हो. All you have to make sure is that it doesn't have any sharp edges, right? Most of the plastic PET bottles, the caps don't have the sharp edges. So you can use these as simple loose play material. So you have a basket, you keep all these and let children pull out those, make their letters, make their numbers. It's very interesting when they do it. And again, as a floor play. Now, what is the science spiral? They said, so I'm not put it in any particular sequence or order. These are just mixed ideas. So usually we start with body parts and functions. Now, what are we giving them? A base of biology. So if we have touched on hands, fingers, let's keep using them. What I really feel that, we must in our head be very clear that we have to integrate it. I'm using body parts in my general awareness. Let me bring my body parts into my numbers. Let me also use my body parts in my language and my literacy. right? So if I'm doing eye, let's use the picture image of eye, let them to color it. So what are we doing? We are mastering the concept of myself, my body parts, using it for numbers and also using it for your literacy. Now, mixing of colors. What are the colors we start with? The basic colors, we always start from nursery, red, yellow, the primary colors, red, yellow, blue, green. At the most, then white and the black, and then we move on to the secondary and the tertiary. Then we mix the colors. Now, I have rarely seen in nursery KG children allowed to mix colors. We will only introduce colors through a color chart. ये red, yellow, blue, green है. अब इस आपको orange है, brown है, purple है, etc. etc. Pink है. But if we actually help them to see that we create these colors, right? So someone would have a darker pink, someone would have a lighter pink, someone would have. So what are we telling them? The reactions, the chemistry, the solutions. When we mix things, when you add a little red color to a glass of water or a bowl of water, the water changes color. So these small little things, when we do it as small experiments with in the foundational years, they are great foundation for their later years. Float and sing will move to sailing, measurements, heavy, light, weight concept. We have a little weighing scale in the class. We help them to see how we weigh each thing, how much each child weighs, So they love to do all these activities. The wet and dry eventually will move into the topic of evaporation. Sun, moon, earth, star that we teach them, universe, planet. So we build onto it, right? So right now we only know the sun shape, the color of the sun, the brightness of the sun. And eventually we also do an activity that when you put things in the sun, under the sun, they dry, it's hot, we use a cap. Seasons move to climate, concept of hot and cold, then we start taking temperatures. Class 1 and to grade 2 children can also look at today's temperature. In Japan, it's very interesting that even in the foundational years, all children know today's temperature is 30 degrees, 30. So they've done the counting and they're bringing it to the class. So the concept of temperature, concept of hot and how hot it is, how cold it is. Growth from seed to plant. We all do these very, very common science experiment. Bring the seeds, we do the germination, we put a money plant in a water bottle, children see how the roots grow over the year, a few days, and then how more foliage appears. Then liquid in soil, the matter, the form, from water to ice melts down to and becomes water, etc. Then the balanced diet, why are we eating all this? The different food groups. Now we are not really talking about the food group, that these are cereals, these are dal, but we just show them, we bring it. So when we are doing activities, sensory activities with chana ka dal, chana and the rajma and the atta and the dal, we are also talking to them about it. We all eat all this, we must eat. And we're doing fruits and vegetables. We are only giving them recognition of fruits and vegetables and coloring, and the topic ends there, then we've not gone beyond, right? So if we can move with each topic, bringing in the concept of healthy food, do we eat, how do we eat, raw, cooked, we need to peel it, we need to wash it. So we bring in all these concepts with this one concept of a balanced diet we are introducing when we are doing fruits, vegetables, etc. Then similarly, hygiene and health, personal hygiene that we keep talking about, washing hands, brushing teeth, combing your hair, very simple things that we talk about. And moving to germs and diseases as children grow, then they learn bacteria, virus, fungus, but the base has come as part of their personal hygiene. Now, during the foundational year, there's also a spiral of habits and behaviors, right? If we think the children are going to learn all these when they grow up, they will not learn. And that is the struggle that educators and parents have, because we've not laid and given enough importance to it during their foundational years. Now, what are some of these which need to be and must be inculcated to? Our focus remains on the academic aspect, but those are not life lessons, right? Those are for academic purposes, very important. But alongside, we must introduce the other things. the personal hygiene. Are we talking about the children are brushing teeth? हम book में दिखा देते हैं picture, child is sleeping on time, the child is brushing. Enough. Or are we doing it during a circle time? We are talking to them. Are we doing a role play of brushing? Are we inviting a dentist to come to the class and show children some? There are interesting activities some of these dentists come and do with, which children can actually do. They see how the teeth join, how are the jaws, they feel the jaws. We could do one day, every child brings a brush and it's a hygiene, personal hygiene day. They all bring a comb. We talk about the importance of using your own personal comb, washing your comb, keeping your comb clean, changing your brush, the technique to do your brushing. Then the food. Now, these are some of the very simple things which even adults miss out on. I can guarantee you, of the 153 of us sitting here, probably 1% would be able to know the correct technique. Even I didn't know till I had this dentist come in and have a session with our children, a role play session. Food habits. Okay, so we could even do different time. Are we just letting children bring in anything that they know, or are we also getting engaged into every child brings in something like that, which can be had with the fork or something which is a spoon food or is a finger food? How do we, today is a paratha day, how every child is making small bits morsels and having it, independent eating, hand washing before eating, hand washing after eating, clearing your table after eating, opening your own tiffin. Now, these are very small but very important aspects of your habits and behaviors, social courtesies and behaviors. No, I'm not saying that we have to force our children to say good morning, auntie I hai usko bolo, new teacher has come usko bolo, friend ko bolo. This should become a part and parcel of their everyday routine, everyday schedule. Right? So when it happens as part of an everyday routine, children say, teachers say, children say, teachers say, they pick it up on a daily basis. Right? But if you are waiting for that special occasion to do it, children will miss out on that. Then, as I said, self-dependency, about taking out their tiffin, putting it back. Sometimes they may drop something, that's okay. They may spoil their clothes, it's okay. So let's not embarrass them. Let's not reprimand them for all this. Responsibility of keeping their things intact. How do we keep our books? How do we keep our crayons? How do we keep our things back in place after using it? And saving resources, one of my most favorite topics, right? Turning off the lights and fans when not in use, keeping the table and chair back in place when we are leaving the classroom, maybe keeping your books back in, whatever is there. So we must inculcate these habits and behaviors as part of, we don't focus only on literacy, numeracy. I'm saying all these should also get embedded into your numeracy, literacy, and general awareness. We know the world, but we don't know how to operate. So if we don't want to raise such children. Now, why is this spiral approach to learning so very important when it comes to foundational years? Children don't like to learn. I was talking about the joy of learning. They lose interest when things are always at a basic level and children are not challenged to move to the next level. When we are studying only one thing, then there's no variety. Now, as I said, you're doing numbers, but when you involve variety, you're doing numbers with leaves, you're doing numbers with pebbles, you're doing numbers with glass, you're doing numbers on the floor, you're doing numbers with the crayon, you're doing numbers with the chair, you're bringing variety. But topic remains numbers, right? So they don't want to learn in just one way. And they must encounter information in different ways, right? So there has to be variety. Now, that is where the creativity of our educators is. Keep learning fascinating. That is what children need. And learning that increases in depth and complexity, there is variety, and the multiple experiences of the same content, of the same topic. When we do this, which are all the elements of spiral approach to learning, learning becomes joyful, learning becomes interesting, learning is mastered, and learning is a lifelong learning. Now, what is it that research has spoken about spiral approach to learning? That this is the best way to learn because it activates your prior learning. So you're continuously revisiting it and you're rebuilding on the prior learning, and it produces good learning gain for almost all students. Almost all students, regardless of age and their developmental level. So as I said, every child learns at their pace. Every age they will learn. Some are fast learners, some are slightly slow learners. And these days we have also a lot of learning disabilities in children. So if we use this approach to learning, which is not something out of the box, something that we are all engaged in, we are all doing, but we have to do it little more mindfully. Then what happens that we are engaging our children as lifelong learners. They will enjoy the process of learning. So thank you very much. If you like my sessions, show me some love and follow me. These are my Instagram and my social media handles. So over to all of you now for the question and the answer session. So I see a lot of thanks, ma'am. Thanks, ma'am. Hearts, 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 hearts. Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody, if they have any questions? Anybody? Anyone has any questions, they can please ask. Yes, a lot of feedback, ma'am. A lot of feedback on the chat box. I think it was indeed a very, very effective session and a very, very interesting session. And like always, Neena ma'am adds so many examples to it that it becomes very easy to apply it in your daily life. That becomes how to explain concept to the kid. Nandini ma'am, can you elaborate on this? I'm not sure if I understand. If you can raise your hand, I'll allow you to unmute.
How can we deal with the
Yes, ma'am. You can please unmute yourself.
hyperactive?
Ma'am, hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Ma'am, I just want to ask that if we want to explain concepts like big and small and any other concept, what would be the easiest method to explain them?
Okay. So you said big and small. As
Yeah.
an educator, you are big and children are small. Make your child stand next to you, hug the child
Okay.
and tell him, oh, you're going to grow bigger. You will be taller to ma'am. Very soon, ma'am will be shorter. Right? And
Okay.
children will never forget that.
Okay.
And they relate to you. They love you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Dikshita, yes, ma'am. You can please unmute yourself.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Ma'am, my question is to you is, the way you gave the activities were very useful and worthful. But ma'am, what about the course completion then? If we continue the topic which you gave, that was the alphabetical order. I wrote in the message also the alphabetical order. You said the activity very nicely. Yes, we can apply it. If the child is not getting, then also, like we made boxes in the floor and I asked somebody to come, suppose my children name is Monish. My student name is Monish. I asked Monish to come and go to the letters of your name itself. And I'm having 7 to 8 or 18 to 16 students together. Right. And then I explain one or other day. What about the average child? The good one get it properly. What about the average and the like less one, those who are not getting the things properly, or those who are just learning the things like, okay, this is the English where we need to speak like this. They're just grasping the language of a teacher. At that time, how we can apply this?
Yeah.
That is my question.
Okay. Dishita, thank you for your question. Now, first part of your question was that if we go this way that I have shared with you, then you're not going to complete the course. I can guarantee you, Dishita, you will complete the course because children will enjoy the process of learning. It will no more be a struggle. Now we have to be creative. Let's say if I gave you an example of a floor game, right? So you now as an educator know that in my class, these 10 kids are quick learners. I don't need to spend much time with them. They will finish the worksheet also. तो आप क्या कर सकते हो? आपने वो जो छोटे छोटे कार्ड बनाए ना, आप उनको 3-4 लेटर्स वर्ड्स दे दो, वो बैठ के अपने आप उसको पजल में जोड़ते रहेंगे, क्योंकि उन्होंने अपनी वर्कशीट खत्म कर ली ना, अब वो डिस्ट्रक्टिव भी नहीं है. Children who are taking more time are the ones where you are needed more, right? Now, usually it is just the other way around. Educators are focusing more on the ones who actually are quick learners, but they're not focusing on those who are actually taking more time to learn. Quick learners ke liye you need to have additional things which you give it to them to keep them engaged so that they don't become distractive in the class. Other children, you can sit with them, you can help them, you can do a floor game, and you can, in fact, you know what we have used to do, some of these kids who are very quick learners, we used to engage them as assistant educators. They would help us. They would sit with this group who was taking time and say, okay, I'll help you play this game. Children learn faster from other children than they learn from the adult. It's proven. Try it out. And when we help them to master the basics, they'll learn to write ABC way faster. You struggle with them to straight write ABC, they will take time. They'll forget it. वो फिर केजी में जाएंगे, कोई A उल्टा लिखेगा, कोई D उल्टा लिखेगा. Okay, so when you try this, you will see their writing will be better. They will be faster at their writing. Yeah, just have little patience. Yeah.
Let's take another question. Rupika ma'am. Yeah, Rupika ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am. Such a one. Hello. Yes. Greetings to all and thank you. It has been a wonderful session. Very interesting and all practical tips were there. My question was that how to strike a balance between whatever we are doing in the class and as a home task. So what the worksheets that they are doing under our supervision, fine, we can see that. But should the same worksheets or similar worksheets be sent back home for the parents to see, or some other extended home task can be given? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rupika. Now, many a times, as I said, that we are very keen to go on a fast pace, right? Fast forward mode हमें बहुत अच्छा लगता है, but वो नहीं चलता है. Learning happens only with lot of repetition, right? Mastery happens with lot of repetition. When we practice it on a daily basis, we develop mastery on any skill. May it be writing, may it be reading, anything. So whatever you are doing, please ensure that your parents, you give them the revision sheets. That's it. And suppose your children who are now, again, your revision sheets need not be the same. If you know that a child already knows it, some children you can give an extra level, next level of a revision sheet. I mean, practice sheet, whereas children who need more practice on a particular one, you give them that practice sheet. Now we tend to become very universal when it comes to giving the practice sheets, right? So उसमें अगर आप थोड़ा सा अपना use your own judgment, that because you know your children the best. Nobody is telling us that you have to give the same assignment to all the children. If you can segregate your children depending on the pace of their learning. And some skills, some children will master faster, and some skills, some other children will master faster. Right? So based on to that, you can just help them to revise that. But revision is very important. Please don't rush. Please don't rush. You rush, children will always be under stress and pressure in the later years.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Totally agree.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So I think that brings us to the end of the questions. Thank you so much, everybody. It has been a wonderful session. We'll share the feedback form. Yes, I've received the messages. We'll share the feedback form in the group itself. And you can all then submit the feedback form there. That way it's easier. We'll share the feedback form on Monday. Monday morning, the first thing we'll do is we'll share the feedback form. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Neena ma'am. It has been a wonderful session.
Thank you, Madhubun Books. It's always a pleasure to be
No,
here.
the teachers have thoroughly enjoyed today's sessions, and I see that they have also taken home. I see from all the feedbacks and all the questions in the chat box that they've taken home a lot of ideas as well.
Great. If I can do that, I'm already in your classrooms and schools. Thank you very much
Absolutely.
for
Thank you.
transporting me to your spaces. Thank you.
ma'am.
Great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy a good weekend. Bye-bye.